Do you guys remember back in the day when we used to get top bounties every so often? Like, I think it started with Jack back in Zoe. Like, Jack's bounty was revealed to be 1 billion. And then we found out what Katakuri's bounty was. And then Luffy's bounty jumped after Whole Cake Island. And then we found out what Blackbeard's bounty was. So we would get a top bounty every so often, and we were introduced to them gradually throughout the course of several years. And then this chapter comes along and it's like, I actually like this chapter more than the previous one, because in the previous one, we got like two things that were actually confirmed, which is the sword organization within the Marines and the abolishment of the Shichibukai system, and then everything else was just kind of left up for debate, for speculation. As an aside, I think that Big News Morgans would make an excellent YouTuber because he would know exactly what kind of clickbait title to use on his videos to get the most views. So even though last week's chapter was cool, it was still a lot of like very, very vague speculative content, whereas this week we actually got concrete data. You can take a lot of the content from this week's chapter to the bank and it'll be good. The cherry on top for me from this chapter would have been if we had gotten Mihawk's bounty in this chapter as well. But that's just me being plain greedy. Anyway, One Piece made the cover of Shonen Jump because there's going to be a trivia contest to see who knows more about One Piece. I think it's going to be on TV in Japan, and we get a color spread with the Straw Hats riding a bird, a duck. It's a very, very long duck. Reminds me of a subway. The sandwich, not the train. Anyway, the duck is wearing a beanie that says Neko, and it has a cat on it, so I'm thinking that this could be a hint about Nekomamushi arriving in Wano soon. Also, the bird could be a reference to Marco, Marco and Nekomamushi going into Wano. And the side of the duck reads, pick up your speed, which is exactly what the series is doing pacing-wise. I mean, it's going very, very fast. The pace has picked up so much. It's incredible. The chapter opens up with Akainu and Fujitora, which is interesting that they're talking to each other formally because they've been at each other's throats ever since the Dressrosa incident, where essentially Fujitora asked the citizens of Dressrosa for forgiveness over allowing Doflamingo to take advantage of them. And Akainu was really angry at Fujitora over this, to the point where he even told him, like, don't set foot on any Marine base. You are not allowed to go into any Marine base unless you bring me the heads of Straw Hat and Trafalgar Law. So the fact that they're conversing with each other the way that they are gets me to think that perhaps something happened that got Akainu to be in friendlier terms with Fujitora. And I feel like we get a hint of what that could be because Fujitora is all bandaged up. And to me, it's obvious that he's bandaged up because those wounds came from the fight that he had against the Revolutionary Army in Reverie, which was off-screen, but we knew that Green Bull and Fujitora were fighting the revolutionaries in Marijoa. So, I mean, maybe that's what ended up, like, lightening the mood between these two.
And speaking of Akainu after last week's chapter, some people were referencing the cover of chapter 592, where we see Akainu with Kizaru, and Akainu has a tattoo of a sword on his arm. And people were making the connection that this could mean that Akainu is perhaps a member or the leader of Sword. And while I agree that this could make for a very good twist in the future, I personally don't think that he's actually a member of Sword, especially because Akainu tried to kill Kobe, and both Kobe and Akainu's goals and value system seems to be very, very different. Polar opposite almost. So those two being part of the same secret organization within the Marines would be a little bit weird. And I just don't think that Akainu is that good of an actor. However, I definitely think that Aokiji is currently a member of Sword, and that he pretended to leave the Marines, just like Drake pretended to leave as well, and that Aokiji is currently spying on Blackbeard, just like Drake is spying on Kaido. It makes sense that out of the 4 Yonko, Sword would send a spy to Blackbeard and another one to Kaido, because those two, out of the 4, those two are the most volatile to me. Like, they seem to be the most radical ones, the ones that like leaving their territories more often to start conflict, whereas Shanks and Big Mom, they seem to keep much lower profiles and they tend to be more sedentary. until recently, of course. But yeah, we have Kaido going around stating that he wants to start the greatest war the world has ever seen, and then you have Blackbeard participating in Marineford War and being a part of the Payback War. So it makes perfect sense why the Marines would want to keep a close eye on them.
It is interesting, though, that in this chapter, Akainu already knows that Big Mom and Kaido have an alliance when that was intel that Drake gave to Kobe. So maybe Kobe let it slip to the rest of the Marines because that's just... It's too big a piece of information to keep secret. But what's interesting to me is that it appears that Akainu found out about the Yonko alliance even before Garp did. But I guess it's because Garp is semi-retired. And now that Fujitora has gotten his way and the Shichibukai system has been abolished, Fujitora tells Akainu that they have to believe, they have to put their faith in something called the SSG, which I think is obvious that he's referring to whatever Vegapunk invented to replace the power that the Shichibukai held. I've already read some very intricate theories about the possibility of Vegapunk actually inventing a vortex, some type of a portal that allows the One Piece universe to connect with the DBZ universe. And through that portal, Goku will arrive and he will go Super Saiyan God SSG. I am not making this up. It's right there in the chapter. Fujitora says it himself. We have to believe in the power of the Super Saiyan God to hunt down these pirates. Also, Fujitora seems to be somewhere in the Calm Belt because you see a Sea King trying to attack his ship. So I wonder where he's going. But yeah, he should be traveling along the Calm Belt because that's usually where the Sea Kings nest. Like I said last week, from what Kobe told Drake, it doesn't seem like the Marines will be interfering in Wano. Akainu gives the order to not get involved by the end of this chapter. So fortunately or unfortunately, I think this chapter pretty much confirms that. No Marines in Wano. But enough about that, let's talk about Rocks, man. According to Sengoku, Rocks was a pirate crew that was formed, that originated in Beehive Island. And that place, Beehive Island, is significant because not only is it the place where we saw Blackbeard last, that's where Blackbeard was and where Moria arrived, but Beehive Island is also the place that gave birth to the competition known as the Davy Back Fight. If you know about the Davy Back Fight, you know that it's essentially a competition that bets crew members. So it's like, if we win, we get that crewmate of yours, and if you win, you get this crewmate of ours. So it's like this massive exchange of very valuable people. We knew from the first time that the Rocks was ever mentioned, which was back in Reverie, by Garp. I think it was either Hina or Garp who mentioned it. And by the way, back then, we didn't know if it was pronounced Rocks with an R or Locks. Turns out it's Rocks. It's with an R. Because a lot of people were saying, what if it's like Gold D Locks? But no, it's Rocks. So from Reverie, we knew a couple of things already. We knew that it was thanks to Rocks that Garp was eventually hailed as a hero of the Marines. We know that this whole thing had happened around 40 years ago, and we knew that Big Mom and Kaido had been part of the same crew at some point. Plus, we also knew that before Roger's time, it was the era of Rocks. Now it makes sense why. You got 3 future Yonko in one crew. If we were to get the Battle of God Valley in the manga, in flashback form, something nasty would happen to my body. We got Whitebeard, Big Mom, and Kaido in the same crew. Plus, we have Golden Lion Shiki. You get to see his hair there. He's there in that obscure panel, in the panel with the silhouettes. There's a guy with spiky hair that's a lot shorter than the rest, and I don't know who that guy is, but it's the silhouettes, man. Oda and his silhouettes, just, he loves those things. We have somebody called the Silver Axe, who we don't know who that is. We have Captain John, who we saw his body back in Thriller Bark, because it had been reanimated to be a zombie, and Captain John is actually, this is crazy, because Buggy has been yearning for Captain John's treasure. It's just crazy how much weight and importance Buggy has to the overall story, because when he first talks about wanting this treasure, you're like, yeah, whatever. You kind of think that it's a joke, that it's just this running gag that he has, but it's like, no, this guy was part of the Rocks. Holy crap, what is this treasure? Now, because of what Sengoku says in this chapter about God Valley being an island that has been erased from the archives and the maps by the world government, it wouldn't surprise me if the map that Buggy has, or the map that leads to Captain John's treasure is actually a map that leads to God Valley, and that map has the location of a treasure that's hidden within God Valley. Or, and this would be the biggest WTF moment, it wouldn't surprise me if that map leads to the fourth final road poneglyph that you need to get to Raftel. So we had Golden Lion Chigi, Silver Axe, Captain John, and then somebody called Ochoku, or Wang Zi, who was a Chinese pirate. I read a little bit about him because of the little side note that was there. Turns out that this Chinese pirate actually had dealings in Japan at some point. He resided there for a while, so maybe we'll get to see this character in Wano as well. In the panel where Sengoku is naming these characters, you actually get to see Panda Man wearing a marine outfit. Then Sengoku starts petting his goat, and he says that the goal of the Captain of the Rocks was to become king of the world. So essentially, the Captain of the Rocks wanted to become what Emu is now. So that's why the government was like, we need to shut this party down. They felt they needed to keep it hush-hush and erased rocks from the history books so that people wouldn't get any ideas about opposing the world government. We get a little bit of a panel there showing the ship that belongs to the rocks. And what I thought was interesting was that if you look at their flag, the O in rocks is a flaming skull. So I thought that maybe it could be a possibility that perhaps the Captain of the Rocks had the Mera Mera no Mi, and that's why it was a flaming skull, because he had the power to control and be fire. The Battle of God Valley happened 38 years ago, and that's when Garp got the recognition or the name of the hero of the Marines. We actually get a scene with Garp, and we see him leave Fishman Island with those wooden blocks that pull your ship up to the surface. Now, just to be clear, I think it's pretty obvious that that island, God Valley, was actually an island that belonged to the Celestial Dragons. I think it was being occupied by the Tenryubitu. It explains the name, God Valley. Like the Celestial Dragons think that they're descendants from gods, or like that they're the gods of the world or whatever. And in that panel where you see the Rocks logo, the Rocks flag with the flaming skull, you see a guard that has the exact same outfit that the guards of the Reverie have. So yeah, I think it's pretty certain that God Valley used to be a place where the Celestial Dragons could go and hang out. I don't think they're hanging out there anymore because, they're trying to erase the island from the map, and they probably abandoned the island after the fight, but I do think that it was a special place where the Tenryubito could hang out there. So Garp's job was to protect the Celestial Dragons and their slaves from the invasion of the Rocks pirates, and then a very unexpected ally ended up teaming up with Garp, which is crazy because, if Garp doesn't like the Celestial Dragons, why doesn't he just quit? I don't know. It's like, because Sengoku's like, he doesn't want to be an admiral because he doesn't want to work under the Celestial Dragons, but you still kind of have to follow their orders anyway, because the Marines are a branch of the world government, and the world government tells you what to do. The world government tells the Marines, you gotta do this, even though Akainu kind of gets infuriated with the elders at some point, you still have to follow their orders. So Garp is technically still working under the Celestial Dragons in a way. But as we found out back during the Reverie, not all Celestial Dragons are horrible people. So just keep that in mind. However, I am very surprised by the fact that Roger actually teamed up with... I'm not surprised that they teamed up. I'm surprised that Roger actually was protecting the Celestial Dragons and their slaves just like Garp. Because Garp had a responsibility. He has a job. That's his job. But Roger... What happened there? Maybe there was just a bunch of innocent people that were about to die had Roger not intervened. Maybe Roger was there to get that road poneglyph, and he was like, Garp, I help you out, but can you help me get that poneglyph after we're done here? I scratch your back, you scratch my back. In fact, I think this makes perfect sense because we know that Garp at one point was told by Roger. Roger told him, Garp, I consider you one of my crew members. Literally, we've been trying to kill each other for so long. We've been on this world for so long trying to fight each other. I trust you as much as I trust one of my nakama. So that's why I will entrust Ace to you. Please take care of my son. No wonder these two guys had so much trust between each other.
Garp, you come asking me for a favor. Mamma mia. Well, one day I will ask of you a favor. And I will be very disappointed if you do not grant me that favor. I will ask of you to pay the child support for my son Ace.
We actually get a picture of Rocks, or a silhouette rather, and Sengoku reveals that his full name was Rocks D. Xebec. It's crazy how it took two D's teaming up, Monkey D. Garp and Gold D. Roger to take out another D. That's crazy. It reminds me of that quote from Law when he's fighting Doflamingo and Dressrosa, and he says, "The will of D will always brew up a storm." And Sengoku reveals that Rox actually had knowledge and was involved in many of the world's taboo subjects. So to me, that implies that Rox knew about the poneglyphs, he knew about the Void Century, and he knew about the ancient weapons. Which kind of makes sense considering what Big Mom tells Luffy in Whole Cake Island, that if that deal with Lola and the Giants had gone through, she would be king of the pirates. So I think she got that information from her previous captain, Rox. This could also work to begin to explain how it was that both Big Mom and Kaido ended up with a road poneglyph each. Also, according to the wiki, one of Blackbeard's ships is called Saber of Xebec. Saber means sword, and we actually do see Rox D. Xebec with a sword in this chapter. So I kind of wonder if that was the inspiration for the name, if Blackbeard was inspired to become a pirate by the story of Rox, or if there's actually like a blood relation because they're both D's, right? I mean, in just one chapter, we get two connections between Blackbeard, Marshall D. Teach, and Rox. The first one is Beehive Island, and then the second one is the name Xebec. Then Sengoku turns it over to Brand New, who is the Marine in charge of setting bounties, but not before we find out that both Big Mom and Kaido are a lot stronger now than they were 38 years ago, which makes sense. I mean, I think it's pretty obvious. I'm actually kind of curious to find out whether or not Shaki was part of the God Valley incident and whether she was there or not, because she did tell Luffy at one point back in Sabaody Archipelago that Garp had actually chased her and had wanted to capture her. So it'd be interesting to see if she was there, and then maybe that's how she met Rayleigh, who was under Roger back then. Good evening, everybody. My name is Sawyer7Mage. I want to welcome each and every single one of you listeners to this week's episode of Bounty Talk. But before I go any further, I just want to note how brilliant the projector Dendenmushi is, where it scans the thing that you want to project with one eye and projects it with the other. I think this is the first time that we've seen a projector in One Piece, right? We start off with Blackbeard's bounty, which we already knew because we got it in between Act 1 and 2 of Wano. And I've said this before, but Blackbeard's bounty of 2,247,600,000 is actually a reference to the real Edward Teach's bounty in real life, who was the real Blackbeard. Because Blackbeard's bounty back in the 1700s was 100 pounds. So if you convert that to yen, to present day yen today, it gives you a number that is roughly similar to Marshall D. Teach's bounty in the series. So that's just a nice little Easter egg that Oda decided to drop in regards to Teach's bounty. Now, I don't expect him to keep this bounty for very long, especially since in the last chapter he said that he was moving to take something that the Marines were also aiming for. So I definitely expect Blackbeard's bounty to shoot up and be much more the next time we actually see him. Then we go to Shanks, who has been a Yonko, according to Brand New, for 6 years, which is important because I remember there was a Vivre card or something that said that when Luffy met Shanks, when Shanks gave him the hat, Shanks was already a Yonko, which made absolutely no sense to me. So I never really talked about it because it just made no sense. So no, he was not a Yonko when he gave Luffy the hat. He became a Yonko much later than that because Luffy is 19 right now. So 19 minus 6 is 13. So Luffy was not 13 when he was given the hat. And then Brand New calls out the Yonko commanders that belong to Shanks in this order, which I think we kind of already knew, but just in case. First Yonko commander is Beckman, second commander is Lucky Roo, and third Yonko commander is Yasopp. That's Zoro, Sanji, and Usopp when it comes to the Straw Hat Pirates, or at least that's the connection that my mind made. Brand New states that Shanks' crew is the most well-balanced, which to me kind of signifies that, how there's a pretty big gap between Yonko commanders and the actual Yonko, let's say Katakuri and Big Mom. Katakuri is really strong, but there's still a pretty big gap between him and Big Mom power-wise. So I think that what Brand New is saying is that perhaps the gap in power between Shanks and his commanders isn't that big as in other Yonko crews. Or maybe he just means that the crew specializes in a whole bunch of different things. And Shanks' bounty is none other than 4,048,900,000. Boom! It makes sense to me that with the exception of Teach, Shanks is the lowest. because, well, for one, he's the youngest, as mentioned by Brand New, and he's only been a Yonko for 6 years, and more importantly, as I've mentioned before, like Shanks doesn't really go out there to create conflict just because. Like he's very chill. He's very, very chill dude. He has connections within the pirate world and the marine world and the world government. When he stops the war, Sengoku actually says, "Yo, I actually respect this guy. So let him take the bodies. Let him take, Ace and Whitebeard's bodies so that they can bury them." Nobody gets that kind of recognition within the Marines. If you're super problematic, Shanks got an audience with the Gorosei. Okay, you do not get an audience with the Gorosei if you are an incredibly problematic person for the world government. It just doesn't happen. So I believe that the bounty that was assigned to him came as a result of his status. Because in order to keep that status as a moderate, you can't allow yourself to be a radical. You can't allow yourself to be too extreme. And I think the same kind of logic would apply to Big Mom in the sense that even though she is a threat and she's a very menacing woman, she usually stays in her territory. She invites people in her territory and then starts messing with them once they're in it. But she doesn't necessarily go out to start stuff. Whereas somebody like Kaido would have gone to Marineford if it wasn't for Shanks intercepting him. And even then, these are still pretty high bounties. So Big Mom's bounty is 4,388,000,000. Boom! Kaido's bounty is 4,611,100,000. And I like how he is referred to as Governor General. It's like, hello, Governor. Boom! We can no longer use the 7 warlords as a weapon against the 4 emperors. We'll have to see how the SSG from the Marine Special Science Force performs. SSG, so that's probably like S is Special Science, right? SS, Special Science Giants, Special Science Goats, Special Science Gigolos, Special Science Gorillas. We'll have to see how the Special Science Guacamole from the Marine Special Science Forces performs. Then we get the bounties of these 2 very special fellas, which were apparently fighting each other to death back in God's Valley, but ended up being friends by the end of it all. So we find out that Whitebeard Edward Newgate had a bounty of 5,046,000,000 on his head, and Pirate King Goldie Roger was worth 5,564,800,000. I'm not gonna lie, Roger's bounty, in my opinion, is a little bit low for the Pirate King. I would have given him at least 7 billion, maybe even 8. And if the Yonko bounties had been higher, here's what I would have done. I would have started with Roger being, and this seems a little bit too extreme, but I would have given him 10 billion and then worked my way down from there. Nevertheless, Roger's bounty starting with 5,5 to me is a complete reference to Ace's bounty, which is the one that you see on screen. And then also because Luffy is destined to become king of the pirates and eventually surpass Roger, it would make sense that Luffy's final bounty would be 5.6 billion, around that mark, simply because 5, you can actually say it in Japanese as go, and 6, you can say it as mu. So go mu, gomu gomu no. The chapter ends by hyping up Kozuki Oden by connecting him to Whitebeard, Roger, and Shanks, and because we got that at the end, to me it's very obvious that next week we'll go back to Wano and Act 3 will start. You hype up Oden and you segue into Wano. So we're definitely going to be finding out more about Oden soon. In fact, the last panel of the chapter, if you read what Sengoku says, it almost reads like a giant advertisement for you to get excited to go back into Wano. I thought the chapter was excellent. And there's actually one more. It's like a theory, it's like speculation, but I'm very confident in this being true, this being the case. If you notice, the bounties that we got, the order that we got them in, if you arrange the bounty posters from highest to lowest, I believe it gives you the order in which these characters will be defeated, okay? What I mean is this. The highest is Roger, right? So he died, all right? And after that came Whitebeard. After Roger came Whitebeard. Then Whitebeard died, and the one that follows beneath Whitebeard is Kaido. Kaido's about to get defeated. In my opinion, he will be defeated in Wano. After that, the bounty that follows under Kaido is Big Mom. So after Kaido gets defeated, then Big Mom's going to get defeated. After Big Mom, Shanks is going to get defeated. And then finally, Blackbeard will be defeated to conclude the Yonko saga. Boom! Like I said before, I would be very curious to find out what Mihawk's bounty actually is now that the Shichibukai system has been abolished. And I also, like, this chapter just got me to think about Dragon, because Dragon at one point was described as the most wanted man on the planet. So I would like to find out what his bounty is and how it stacks up, how it compares to somebody like Goldie Roger and Edward Newgate.
That's it for me. Thank you so much for watching. Like the video if you did. Appreciate it. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already. For more One Piece reviews, comment down below with your thoughts. I'll catch you guys next week. Take care. Bye.